Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Poultry Feed Additive Summit by Genetics, an event especially designed for poultry nutritionists, where we will discuss the latest industry updates brought to you directly from the world's top leading additive suppliers. Our goal here is to provide you with everything you need to know to stay up to date with the latest research in the field without having to leave your home. So we believe and hope this event will help you prepare you for market challenges. I am Dr. Pratima Adhikari from Mississippi State University. I'm here today hosting the event and we are going live right now. Thank you all for joining us. On behalf of the Voice Genetics team, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. This will certainly be an afternoon full of knowledge and valuable experiences, and we're very happy to have you with us. I'm speaking from Starkville, Mississippi, Mississippi State University. And I'm sure we have people from all over the country joining us. Thanks for that. So feel free to share where you are right now. You can write that in the chat box. We would love to know. I would also like to thank our sponsors who made this event possible, Signify and Perster. Last but not the least, a special thanks to our great speakers who will bring their best to the event. And I'm sure it will add a lot to everyone present. Feel free to also use the YouTube chat if you need to help. If you need help or have any questions, everything will be answered at the end of each presentation. With further ado, let's get started. I would like to introduce our first guest of the day, Dr. Kenneth Anderson, goes by Ken, from North Carolina State University, who will discuss today extended lay and additives to enhance the shell and internal quality at the late ages out to 100 weeks. Dr. Ken, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and yes, I'm speaking from my office and at North Carolina State University. So
Fantastic. Fantastic. And yes, if you will, can pull up the presentation and we're very excited to learn about what is there in the extended lay and the feed additives.
all right, let's see if I can hit the present here.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong? Oh, there it is. So pleasure to be with you today. This is something that we've been getting into recently after some of my other excursions over the past 7 years, but trying to look at different additives to enhance shell and internal egg quality at late ages. And now with the lack of molting, um, being used, or the diminished use of molting in the industry, taking hens out to somewhere around 100 weeks of age as a production cycle is becoming more the norm than the exception. And we have to deal with some of those instances today. Um, so here again, I've been around a long time. When I was older, when I was younger, we called this cage layer fatigue. It's more prevalent in late cycle hens, and today it falls into two two components: osteomalacia, which is diminished calcium intake, and we get softening of the bones, uh, and which is reversible. Osteomalacia is reversible. I've actually taken a flock through it and got some recovery of production. Osteoporosis is more severe. This is typically more at a component of unrecoverable. You get more deflection of the keel bone, like is shown in the photograph on the left or on the right. But we also see on my right, we also see other conditions deterioration of shell structure, and softening of the leg bones as well, which causes the fatigue component of cage layer fatigue. And the birds actually go down typically from some type of broken bones. There's a number of causative factors, vitamin D3, if we have that in deficient or in deficient status. This will inhibit the absorption of calcium. The other thing that we see is calcium absorption, and this changes over time. Some work that we did back in 1994 basically shows that as hens progress, primarily from around peak, which is mid-cycle, all the way to late cycle, we have a decrease in calcium in the ability of the gut to absorb calcium in sufficient enough quantities to maintain shell structure. The other thing is, depending on you might have a calcium deficiency. Some of the calcium deficiency can be caused by actually having the wrong form of calcium in the diet. Typically, we split that through coarse and fine. But if you have too much fine, you can actually create a calcium deficiency in the diet and cause either osteomalacia or porosis. It's a major problem, and it can start even in the pullet stage where we don't get enough medullary bone formation. So it's more important. It's very important that as we start birds uh, early on in life, that we get a good skeletal development and your long bone and large bone medullary bone formation in them. If we don't, when we enter into the production phase, we typically wind up in a negative calcium balance, and we actually can lose a lot of bone integrity at that point in time. It becomes more pronounced as the hens go enter in through the climb up to peak, and then through peak production somewhere from 20 to 35 weeks of age. And this is typically almost a constant increase in production out to peak. Breeders have suggested that they start birds a little bit. That they hold birds back a little bit and get them starting in production a little later in life, which gives them a little bit more time to develop get their bone formation developed as they enter into that production, which helps them as they go through that increase to peak production. Severity in calcium and absorption becomes severe, increases in severity as the hens move from 40 to 60 weeks of age, primarily because calcium absorption declines and feed consumption at this point in time becomes stabilizes. And here again, all the nutrients that the bird need are competing for space in the diet. So we have to be very cognizant of what is in the diet as we formulate that. And this was shown by Whitehead and Fleming. And when we start talking about late cycle on out to 100 weeks. Egg sizes increases, and this is where we wind up running into some shell problems, simply because the eggs are getting so large, and the hen secretes X amount of calcium, about 5.4 grams of calcium. And if you're stretching that over a larger surface area, the eggshell naturally gets thinner. And then also, as we get into these late ages, the nutrient density in the diet, we typically, because consumption is in the 105 to 110 grams per day basis, we change the nutrient density on the diet. The goals to extended lay is we do everything we can to increase mineral and vitamin absorption. We want to maintain bone and skeletal integrity by doing this. And here again, maintaining bone and skeletal integrity is very important as we try to get the hen to maintain that shell structure over an extended period of time. We also actually we want to improve egg production if we can through some of the things that we feed the hen in late cycle. And this does not always equate to um, the protein in the diet or the energy, but may equate to some of the ingredients or additives that we add to the feed. The other thing is we want to maintain egg quality. If you maintain egg numbers without maintaining a good internal egg quality, such as albumin, viscosity, or the vitellum membrane strength, we lose something when we go to the breaking plant. And then improve shell quality. We always want that if we're maintaining eggs for the shell egg industry. And in all cases, whatever we provide the bird can should help reduce stress. And by reducing stress, you can always improve a lot of these other components. Here again, bone development. Bone development isn't just and maintenance isn't just for a pullet, although it's extremely important that we get the birds started out right. Here again, we want to feed the birds calcium, phosphorus, vitamin D3 in the feed. We want it to get into the bird's body uh, via the liver, kidney, the blood, uh, and bone cortex and bone marrow. But ultimately, for a laying hen, we want to get it into the shell, into egg production and good egg quality. One of the ingredients that we use is phytase enzyme, and there are a number of companies that produce enzymes that break down the phytic acid in plants. And these phytic acids bind to some of the essential minerals that are important for egg production and shell quality and calcium and phosphorus absorption, especially in these late cycles, calcium, phosphorus, and manganese. Some of the ingredients that I've worked with, and there are some others that are out there. Some of the yeast extracts are used as well to help supplement the diet and to extend lay. But some of the ones to increase mineral and vitamin absorption, here again, the phytase. Brains the enzyme that breaks down the phytic acid in plants and releases bound essential minerals such as calcium, phosphorus, and manganese that are used in the calcium carbonate structure in the egg. Some others, another one that we've worked with and looked at is sodium bicarbonate. And this has actually been shown to enhance egg production, shell calcium content, and help improve feed conversion and shell thickness. This can also be important. We now have some facilities that are providing water to the birds with very low pH, and sodium bicarbonate may help to buffer some of that and bring the system back into balance. Some other things are the dactic tuff breccia, basically volcanic ash, has been shown to enhance egg production and quality and enhance calcium and phosphorus absorption. And this has primarily been used and shown in molt procedures when the birds come back into production initially. But it really hasn't been looked at over long-term studies in extended lay with no molt. Some of the other components, oregano derivatives, oils, and these have been shown to increase egg production and egg quality in some instances as well. So, in all things, we always want to try and talk about some of the research that we've been working on. This is a study that we just finished, one of my PhD students, where we looked at 300 white egg hens, here again in a cage layer facility shown off to the right. And we had approximately 30 replicates, and we looked at these at over 7 4-week periods. Here again, from 73 to 101 weeks were in the trial. And then we had a couple, 3 weeks of acclimation period. These are the treatments. We had the control, the basal with 0.25% sodium bicarb, basal with 0.5% sodium bicarb, the basal with 300 units of per kilogram of phytase. And then the fifth treatment was we used the phytase in combination with a 0.5% increase in available phosphorus. Here again, we sampled them over 18 eggs per period. We looked at shell and vitellum membrane strength. We looked at shell color, egg weight, albumin height, yolk, color, Hall units, and then we did an egg component analysis. The primary goal was to determine the effects of sodium bicarb and phytase on egg quality in aging late stage hens. So some of the egg components that we looked at, and here again, surprise, two ways to look at when you're feeding late stage is maintaining a consistent egg and body composition as we move through the late stage, or improving it. One thing that we like to say is, well, we're maintaining. So here again, yolk percent, we had no significant differences between any of the treatments nor interaction. So we maintained right around 26 to 27% yolk in throughout the production period. Shell was very consistent, maintained right around 8.5% shell from 73 to 101 weeks. And and we also measured shell thickness, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Albumin percent, we really, here again, we had no percent shift in the percent albumin throughout the late cycle period, as you can see here by the graph. Some of the shell characteristics, shell strength. Here again, we did see a drop in shell strength, which is characteristic. Characteristic of laying hens. We did see in some of the mid periods, around period 4, which is approximately 80 in the 85-week time frame, we did see that phytase actually increased shell strength, but here again, this was not consistent, but the phytase did maintain that strength, improve strength through the last periods, even though it was not significant. We did see some trends in that direction. Shell elasticity, I always say you can't have a totally stiff shell, because if you did, it'd break too easily. You have to have the ability of the egg shell to absorb G forces as it is expelled from the body. So typically eggs will shift about 0.2 of a millimeter prior to break, a little over that. So we had consistent shell elasticity. One way that you get increased elasticity is actually when you get thinner shells, they will actually actually bend more before they break. Shell thickness, here again, was very consistent. We were right around 0.35 millimeters of thickness throughout the study. So we were able to maintain that shell thickness throughout the late cycle phages, which is a good thing. Vitellum membrane characteristics. Here again, interestingly enough, the sodium bicarb, as well as some of the phytase, we actually resulted in an increase in vitellum membrane force in that in that second to the last period, which is right around 96 weeks of age. And then that was maintained through to 101 weeks of age. So we had improved vitelline membrane. So when the consumer goes to break that egg into the skillet, the vitelline membrane won't fall apart in the pan. The work of penetration, or here again, elasticity, which means that this interaction followed the same trend as the vitelline membrane strength did, in that the membrane was more elastic, or it had the more work to penetrate that, and the membrane would flex actually up to 2 millimeters before it broke. Some of the internal egg characteristics we always want to say, well, egg weight increases as hens age. Here again, we were able to maintain all of the egg weights below 70 grams, which is somewhat, I think, is unusual. And this may have been due to the strain that we use, which is a W36, which was a lighter weight bird anyway, laid slightly smaller eggs. The other thing is the use of the phytase and the sodium bicarb actually helped us keep the egg weight down a little bit into the mid 60s. And here again, any time you can do that, you can improve shell strength because of that lower egg weight. Albumin height, here again, there was no significant difference between any of the treatments. So we maintained good albumin height as we did with Hall unit. We were able to maintain the Hall units throughout the production period, which is a little bit unusual since we typically see some drop off in Hall units as in eggs from older hens. So kind of in conclusion, we had tends towards significance in the vitelline membrane, especially with the interaction. We had, with a higher inclusion rate, ensure birds consumption. So with some of the higher inclusion rates, we were able to maintain the consumption. There were no detrimental effects on any of the treatments, which is always good. But we need to develop further calibration and research to determine the effectiveness and the ultimate optimal inclusion rate of some of these ingredients. Some of the future research that would be good to look at is how can we improve the bone integrity and the stores in the pullets entering into lay? How can we maintain the calcium absorption rate through peak lay and extended? And then some people are actually looking at mineral and vitamin encapsulation to get release of calcium in the area of the gut where it is better absorbed. So here again, I can't get away. Acknowledgments. Here again, Ishab Padel, research technician, and then all my PhD students. So with that, I guess I've done my 20 minutes. Are there any questions?
Excellent, Dr. Anderson. A very nice presentation. Thank you. We're learning about laying hen and extending lay and how the interventions would help. Yes, I can see there are some questions online, and I think we have a few minutes, at least 5 minutes I can see from my window. So, first question is the value of using sodium bicarbonate from its sodium content or bicarbonate content?
I think it's a relation. Actually, it's a relationship of both. In some cases, because of some of the ingredients that we use in the diet, the sodium content is a little more valuable, especially if we're trying to reduce the amount of salts that we're using in the diets, or if we have some ingredients that have high mineral salts. But I look, and then the carbonate helps us maintain a good balance pH in the gut, I think, a little bit better, and especially in some of these complexes where we're getting they're getting water pHs of 3. So they're looking at any ways they can to help buffer some of that acidic water.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for excellent answer. I have another question here. Do you think it would be worthwhile to pair the sodium bicarbonate slash phytase approach with a different blend, of course, in fine limestone particles to see if shell quality can be pushed a bit higher?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can develop way here again, companies that provide these products don't always like us to mix them together, but but
Right.
if we can get some research done where we can pair the phytases or any of the phytases that are used with some of the other the sodium bicarb or some of the other ingredients, uh, to actually kind of fine tune what the bird is capable of and to enhance that absorption. Anything that we can do to enhance late cycle absorption of calcium, phosphorus, manganese, and even vitamin D3 has been used to try and enhance it. The one thing that we do know is we can't just throw calcium carbonate in the diet because the bird just excretes what's left. I do like the idea of coarser calcium because it is retained in the gizzard a little bit longer, and we get a slower release of calcium, which is always better.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm going to go ahead and take a last question for you here. And then for you all audience, if you have more questions, please feel free to type. We may be able to ask Dr. Anderson at the end of the show before if we have time. So here, the last question before the next talk is, Dr. Anderson, could you elaborate how were you able to maintain or even increase the shell thickness?
Um, Actually, we were able to maintain it. That was, that was uh, kind of an important component for us because a lot of times, especially when we look at some of the old layer test results, we actually had a decrease in grade and quality in those late cycle hens. So feeling that I think we were a positive it's a positive result in that we were able to maintain that shell strength or shell thickness and relatively strength and elasticity throughout the late cycle, I thought was important.
Thank you. Excellent, Dr. Ken Anderson. Thank you again for coming to our Feed Summit webinar today. And we learned a great deal about layer and layer feeding and feed additives. Thank you again for your time, and I'll see you until next time. Take care.
Take care.
Before we take a break, we'll have our next guest, a speaker, Dr. Aaron Stephen from Signify. Today, he will talk about an overlooked factor in animal performance, which is lighting. And just letting you know, after Dr. Stephen's talk, we're going to have a 10 minutes break. And then, yeah, we'll continue. So, yeah, for now, Dr. Stephen, welcome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for
Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you for joining the Poultry Feed Additive Summit. We're here to learn about what's there in lighting. So if you could share your slides when you get a chance.
Yeah, there should be. Perfect. So yeah, welcome. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. This presentation will not be about feed additives, but it is about lighting, which is still a critical component of the environment of poultry. And it's also necessary to achieve optimal results for your farms. So our slogan here is, it's not just light, it's science. We try to apply the science of lighting to poultry to make sure that we're giving them the optimal conditions. I'm talking to you today from our office, actually our laboratory here in Plymouth, Minnesota. We're part of, our company is called Once, but we're part of Signify, which is formerly Philips Lighting. We do agricultural lighting for different segments, including horticulture. We have brands of Fluence and Philips lighting there. Our animal segment once, that's what I'll be talking about today, and also aquaculture, where we provide lighting for offshore salmon farms and also land-based RAS systems as well. In all of these cases, these are biological systems. We're trying to apply lighting in a way that optimizes their growth. In the case of animals, also their well-being and health. So we're really passionate about what we can do with lighting for poultry. And we divide this up into three main categories: performance, welfare, and sustainability. So obviously, being a commodities market, the poultry industry requires good performance. And we believe that by improving welfare and sustainability, we're actually also improving performance, helping the bottom line for the growers, for the integrators, and so on. We're also very passionate about animal welfare. So by improving the conditions for the animals, we believe that we can give them the best life possible. And we put our money where our mouth is, and we're working every day to measure outcomes-based measurements to make sure that we're hitting the welfare outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And finally, sustainability is really important. There's a large energy input that goes into the lighting system, and also even more so, the performance of the animals themselves and the amount of feed that they eat is dependent on the lighting conditions. So putting all of these together, we think that a rising tide raises all boats. And in this case, we can improve all three at the same time. So let me just give you a quick little background on the science of lighting for poultry. So first of all, we know from our own experiences that lighting can affect our emotions, our tendencies, and this is true of poultry as well. So they have some things that are similar to us and some things that are different. So we both have vision, for instance. We both can see the world around us through light. And there's also non-visual functions. These are things that influence the biology of the animal that they're not necessarily perceiving directly. Although we both have eyes, we both have the same basic structures in our eyes, the way that we're perceiving that light, the way that our brains are interpreting those can be quite different. And so we try to look and piece that apart scientifically as best we can. Just as a quick background, what is light? When we're talking about light, what we're talking about is the electromagnetic spectrum. So there's lots of different wavelengths or frequencies of electromagnetic radiation out there, and only a tiny sliver of that radiation is actually visible to the eye. And so that part of the spectrum that's visible to the eye is what we call light. For people, that ranges from violet light at about 400 nanometers to red light, which goes to about 700 nanometers wavelength. In poultry, it goes a little bit lower into the maybe 360 nanometer ultraviolet A spectrum as well. So I mentioned that poultry and humans perceive light differently. And what do I mean by that? Well, partly it's that their visual system is adapted to their environment. So poultry are prey animals. They're looking for predators all the time. They're always on guard. They also perceive a broader portion of the light spectrum. I mentioned that they see into the ultraviolet range. It's important to know that poultry are actually more sensitive to light than humans. They can perceive dimmer conditions, and then it can also perceive a wider range of lighting conditions. And so you can see here in this graph on the right-hand side, this represents the sensitivity of the eye to certain spectral wavelengths. So for humans, our eyes are most sensitive to the green wavelengths. And although we can perceive the blues and the reds, our eyes are not nearly as sensitive to that. Poultry, on the other hand, are much more sensitive to the blue wavelengths, the red wavelengths, and then down here in the ultraviolet A spectrum as well. So what this means is what we might perceive as bright light, poultry might perceive as dimmer light, or in the case of something like blue or ultraviolet light, we might not perceive it very bright at all, whereas poultry could perceive it quite brightly. One of the underlying physiological conditions that make poultry see some of these colors better than we can is because of the photoreceptors in the retina of the eye. So humans are what we call trichromatic. We have 3 different cone cells. those are red, green, and blue cone cells. Birds, on the other hand, are tetrachromatic because they have another cone cell that perceives shorter wavelengths in the violet and ultraviolet range. In this chart here, you can actually see a fifth type that's called a double cone, and that's still kind of being worked out exactly what it can do, but it's thought to be perceived more for motion than it is for actual color vision in poultry. So needless to say, birds have more cone cell types, and that enables them to see more colors. And the consequence of that is that their environment actually looks quite more rich to them than it would to us. So here's two examples. Say like another bird, if they're looking at a bird, something that we might just see as, say, plain black, there might be spectral reflectance and absorptive properties of those feathers in wavelengths that we can't perceive, but a bird can. So in that case, sometimes you can see, or a bird could see another bird as quite complex from a coloring standpoint. And the same for things like insects, like this butterfly here, or seeds as well. A question that often comes up when we're talking about lighting for poultry is, can't we just use sunlight? Isn't sunlight best for the birds? And in some ways it can be, and in other ways it's not necessarily. So natural lighting is not always optimal, and there's a few reasons for that. One is that the weather is unpredictable. You can have bright sunny days where you're exposing the birds up to 100,000 lux intensity, and then you can have dark, cloudy days where it's as low as tens of lux at the most. And on top of that, you have seasonal changes that cause large variations in light intensity, and even more so, large changes in photo periods, so the length of time per day. And it's also important to keep in mind that rarely in the wild would a bird, especially say a wild ancestor of chickens, be exposed to direct sunlight from morning till night. They're often darting between bushes, under the canopy of rainforest, under the shade of a bush. So they're actually receiving dim and filtered green light more than anything else. So it's our belief that by providing a lighting system that can give consistent and predictable effects on the birds, that is the optimal way to go about this. So as we talk about lighting systems, we often talk about it in terms of 4 different properties. So I mentioned already lux, which is a measurement of light intensity. That's how bright the light appears to the animal. I also mentioned spectrum, so which mixture of which wavelengths is making up that light. Another one is photo period or schedule. So that's how many hours per day is their light versus dark. And then finally, the distribution. So is the light uniform? Is it non-uniformly distributed across the floor of the barn or within a housing system for layers, as an example? So to look at that optimizing light system, there's lots of lighting systems out there. Our high-end system, what we call Nature Dynamics, is by far the most flexible lighting system out there. And what this enables is the use of dynamic lighting to optimize that environment. So what it basically is it's a connected lighting system connected to, say, like your smartphone, where you can control light intensity, schedule, distribution, and intensity all together with that system. That's all controlled from a central router and then gateway, and ultimately to each of the lights. So this kind of is a little different than a more basic barn lighting system where you just have them all powered by power and you have a central dimmer that you turn up and down for brightness. This one has more flexibility in terms of those other attributes of lighting. And what that enables us to do is it enables us to optimize each of those parameters and give the best lighting system or lighting recipe to the birds. So with those systems in mind, we've developed different lighting recipes for the different segments. And I'll just mention a few case studies briefly. When we talk about what's best for broiler chickens, traditionally broiler chickens were grown under cool white light and it was dim, and the goal was to have uniform lighting. But there's a discussion over whether or not you can read a newspaper in a broiler barn. Oftentimes the answer was no, because the light was so dim, which would actually be, say, 2 lux or dimmer, that you wouldn't even be able to see the print on a newspaper in that case. There's reasons for why that was the case. It keeps the birds calm. They're not wasting energy, all of that. But at the same time, being stuck in a dark cave for their entire life isn't necessarily optimal for their welfare. So we set out to identify what actually is the best lighting condition for broilers. And some of the literature was quite interesting. I'll just review it quite briefly. There's quite a bit of evidence that blue and green light promote muscle growth. This is obviously good for breast muscle myogenesis. It increases the growth in older birds. It also reduces, blue light reduces fear behavior response and indicators of stress. And the chickens tend to spend a little bit more time resting under blue light. So in general, those were some indications that perhaps blue and or green light are necessary or important for broiler chickens in optimizing their growth. We had actually provided a study in conjunction with Wageningen University looking at preferences of broiler chickens as a function of age and as a function of what kind of spectral content those birds are being exposed to. So in this experiment, they had some choices where they could go to one of 4 different zones that contained either 3000 Kelvin warm white light, 5700 Kelvin cool white light, a mixture of blue-green light, or a mixture of red-green light. And what you can see in this case is that up to week 2, they had this preference for the red-green mixture light and a aversion to the blue-green light mixture. So this indicated as young chicks during the brooding phase, they actually prefer a warmer light or a light with more red and green in it. But as they get older, that preference actually changes and inverts even. And by week 6, you can see that the preference was for a blue-green mixture and a aversion to the red-green mixture. So from this, as well as a number of studies where we were just changing the lighting spectrum, measuring outcomes in terms of welfare, behavior, and productivity, we developed what we call the jungle light recipe. And this recipe is basically a mixture of 2 different spectral compositions depending on the age of the bird. We start with jungle green, what we call, which is actually not green light at all, but it's a green enhanced white light system that contains a full spectrum red, green, and blue spectral composition. And in that case, we provide that for the first 2 weeks of life. The chicks have bright light, it's long days, they get exposed to lots of spectral richness. They're looking for feed and water. They're finding it. The red light stimulates activity. But then as time goes on, day by day, we're shifting the photo period to shorter and shorter. We go from, say, 23 hours photo period on day 0 down to maybe about 16 hours of daylight by day 20 of life. And we're also shifting the spectrum from a jungle green set point to what we call a jungle sky set point. In jungle sky set point, what we're doing is we're actually pulling out a lot of that red light and leaving a green and blue, but even further high blue color ratio. So what we found is that calms the birds, it improves welfare outcomes, and it improves efficiency of feed conversion as well. So this is a patented recipe. Again, it follows these 2 stages, and as such, we've seen both improvements in welfare and in terms of performance. And so here's a summary of that. We've done 5 full-scale trials on this is in commercial housing, on indicators of stress and fear and animal relationship. And in all cases where we measured, we saw improvements in those factors. And over the course of over 40 commercial trials total, we have on average seen that the feed conversion has improved by 3 percentage points. So again, this is a case where improved welfare and improved performance go hand in hand. So shifting over to layers, layers are a very different breed, not just figuratively, but literally. Obviously, the management of layers is a completely different thing. what we're trying to achieve there. We've got a much older bird. They're reproductively active. They have a complex environment where we're asking them to do certain behaviors in certain parts of, say, an aviary system. And all of those things come into play. And I won't go into all of those details now, but I'll just give you a quick high-level overview. You've probably heard this a million times if you've ever heard a lighting talk on layer chickens, but it's worth repeating that red light enhances laying performance and bird welfare for layers. So I mentioned that chickens can see visually and they can see non-visually. And the red light is there because it stimulates directly through the skull to a little portion of the brain that senses light directly. So it's not vision, but non-vision. And what that does is it enables, it sets their circadian rhythm. It lets them know what time of year they're perceiving, what season it is. And we know, since chickens are long day breeders, that they require long day lighting in order to sustain egg lay throughout life. So that red light is best at stimulating that reproductive axis and then keeping that going. There's lots of variations, though, on that red enhanced lighting system, and depending on where you're talking about in a aviary system or what problems or challenges you're facing. So I mentioned that red light is important, but it's not like we advocate for giving monochromatic red light to a chicken all the time. That's not where we're going here. What we actually see as the most beneficial is a white light system with enhanced or added red to it. So to promote egg laying, what we're trying to do is use this warm white with added red, promotes laying behavior. Same for improving fertility and longevity. But there are places in the aviary system where we don't necessarily give that. One example is the under system. So on the floor under the aviary system, what we're trying to do in that case is discourage the chickens from laying eggs there. They're looking for a dim, safe place to lay their eggs, and we don't want that to be the floor. So what we do there is we actually use a brighter, cooler white with blue, added blue in there with bright light intensity. And what that does is it deters them from laying in that segment. Depending on if there's a situation of feather picking or aggression, we can add monochromatic red in that case, just to stop them from pecking. They can't see, say, a wound. They can't differentiate wounds from non-wounds if everything is monochromatic red. That can stop the acute pecking situation, and then we can slowly introduce full spectrum white light back. And finally, bird handling and vaccinations. This is quite a remarkable tool that's at our disposal, which we call monochromatic blue or dim light. So what we do is we just give dim blue light. The birds calm right down. You can walk right up to them. You can handle them. And it's pretty remarkable as a tool. So just to mention, there's lots of things that we can do by optimizing that lighting, say in an aviary system or for breeders for that matter. Pullet piling is always a problem, especially on broiler breeder farms. We have the ability to control some of that aggression or that fearfulness with spectrum. The same with floor eggs. What we can do is use zoning, having different lights of different intensity and different color to discourage egg laying on those. And then obviously sustaining lay, providing that optimal spectrum and intensity in a way that stimulates their reproductive axis to the optimal amount. I mentioned to you that dim blue light is kind of a cool tool. This works with broilers, it works with breeders, it works with layers. And we use this oftentimes in a situation where you need to handle the birds, but we've also been introducing this as a kind of like a moonlight or nightlight for birds. And as Dr. Ken Anderson was mentioning earlier, how the calcium dynamics occurs through for egg laying or for eggshells. We've seen some benefits of providing light at night to layers to improve the eggshell quality as well. So that's actually published research with Clemson University. So again, we call that our jungle moon recipe, although there's lots of variations that we can do with that. Just gonna wrap up with a discussion of two quick topics. I have just a minute or two left. The emerging technology for poultry. You can see here, this is not what you're probably used to in a broiler barn, seeing lights on a feed line. And this is an emerging technology, and I'll just go over it really briefly. I mentioned where naturally the wild ancestors of chickens live in Southeast Asia, in the rainforest. These jungle fowl are not used to bright, uniform light. In fact, their environment is mainly quite non-uniform. There's shadows, there's shades, there's areas of high intensity, of low intensity. And actually, there's quite a bit of research that supports the idea that chickens don't actually want one light intensity. They want to change their light intensity environment over the course of the day, depending on their preference. They want to exhibit certain behaviors in the bright. They want to exhibit certain behaviors in the dim light intensity. If we're lighting up an entire barn uniformly, we take away that opportunity for them to have that choice. And so that's where this this conclusion came from, where birds may prefer environments that have the access to both dim and bright areas, depending on the activity they want to perform. And so with that, we've developed a lighting system in conjunction with one of the top broiler producers and one of the top restaurants in the United States, that we've developed a gradient lighting system. Rather than putting the lighting system on the ceilings, these lights come down and fit right on the feed lines themselves, enabling the birds to have actually relatively bright intensity right under those lights, up to 200 lux, and then relatively dim areas away from those lights as low as 1 lux or lower. What we found over the course of over 50 commercial trials is that we're averaging over a 4 percentage point improvement in feed conversion. We've seen, and there's published research on the lighting system, that you actually get improved welfare outcomes in terms of expression of natural behaviors such as dust bathing, and also increased overall activity and leg health. There's a added benefit of using a lighting system like this, which is that we're not lighting up the entire barn anymore. We're only lighting up small segments of the barn. So it actually overall uses a much lower energy input, which is a sustainability plus for everyone. And like I said, we've tested this around the world, across North America, Europe, and Latin America, and across the board, we're seeing improvements. Also, just wanted to mention, I don't have any slides on this, but I just wanted to mention that with avian influenza becoming ever more important in the industry, everyone's looking more and more towards technologies like ultraviolet C as a method to help sanitize or reduce the risk of outbreaks happening in their barn. And those applications can be both used as surface disinfections. Like right now, we offer a UVC germicidal cabinet that enables us to disinfect, say, like tools, lunch bags, anything that's brought into a farm. But then there's a whole other side, which is the air disinfection itself. And that's a little bit more involved. And this is something that is actively being worked on by us and others, how to disinfect all the air that comes in prior to possibly infecting the birds. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Aaron Stevens, for your nice presentation on lighting. That's right. I mean, it's not nutrition, but as much as nutrition is important, lighting is very important, and especially with these egg layers, because I do myself research with egg layers, and I was very excited to see on the, no offense, but the latter half of your slide.
Sure. Got it.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I can take maybe 1 or 2 questions, and then we're perfect on time. No worries, but there are some questions over at the chat. The first question here is any lighting? Oh, I think it's the lighting. Any lighting recommendations for turkeys?
Yeah, so we do have lighting recommendations for turkeys. Lots of, again, like chickens, the turkeys are divided into segments according to, big toms, small Thanksgiving hens, or breeders. And overall, the concepts aren't that different, but the lighting intensity, the schedules by which we recommend are different, and we have those available, and I'm happy to share those as well. But overall, the lighting products for those are similar. We're still providing red light for turkeys. We're still providing blue-green light. I'm sorry, red light for breeders, blue-green light for, say, grow out or something like that.
Excellent. Okay, one last question. Maybe I can take this to very interesting, Dr. Aaron. Is it possible to quantify the impact that optimized lighting can have on poultry performance?
Yeah, I think for certain, it's like any intervention, whether it's nutritional or environmental. It's just a matter of setting up the test and quantifying that in whichever way possible. Like I've mentioned in my presentation, I showed a few examples of, say, like improved feed conversion, and those kinds of outcomes. It requires a lot of repetition, especially when you're talking about doing this on a commercial farm. So we usually start off small scale, say in a test environment with a university or whatever, where we test them on small scale. But once they're scaled up to commercial scale, we require a lot of trials before we can confidently say what the actual performance benefit is. There's so many other variables at play, and we try to control for those as much as we can.
Sure. Well, again, thank you so much, Aaron and Stephen, for coming here and providing your insights into the lighting with different bars, broilers, and layers specifically. And I mean, we enjoyed this afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Okay, so now we'll have a 10-minute break. Please take an opportunity to stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, drink coffee, water, grab a coffee, whatever you want to do. We'll be back soon. And before we go, however, I would like to thank our sponsors, Signify and PartSturb. See you in a few minutes.
My heart rages around like an ocean in my head, because there are so many things that I left unsaid. I can almost feel you walking in the distance, but I know that is not reality. If you are echoing around inside these parallel dimensions all alone, know I'll find you in my dreams. My heart rages around like an ocean in my head. I can almost feel you walking in the distance, but I know that is not reality. If you are echoing around inside these parallel dimensions all alone, know
Hello again, and welcome back, everyone. I am Dr. Pratima Adhikari, and I'm our host this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the break and took a chance to recharge yourself, your batteries. Before here we go again. Let's continue with our presentations and move on to our next speaker. Please remember that at the end of these presentations, we'll have a question and answer session. So far, we're doing great. We so far had two speakers. We already spoke and came and spoke in our episode today. So now I would like to welcome Dr. Jonathan Broomhead from Perstor to discuss the heat stress benefits of organic acids in the small intestine. Welcome, Dr. Broomhead.
Thank you, Dr. Adhikari.
Nice to see you again. We're very excited to learn about heat stress and benefits of organic acid. So yeah, please feel free to share your slide. I can see your slides popping in, so it's all yours.
Certainly, yes. Heat stress is now going to be upon us soon. Some sooner than others, but here in the U.S., it'll be a good short time before we see heat. But I'd like to first introduce Perstorp. We have been in the specialty chemicals market for over 140 years, and 60 years of that has been in the animal nutrition, with 10 years with our innovative esterification process for many of our gut health products. But talking about heat stress, there's money challenges, altered morphology, digestive issues, absorption, leaky gut permeability, gastrointestinal epithelial integrity issues, which cause bacterial translocation across the gut wall. But you also have that microbial shift involved, when you upset the intestinal, causing that dysbiosis, or again, pathogen colonizing the gut. And then, of course, the inflammatory state of the bird becomes increased, which then, energy is being used for inflammation versus, typical growth. That leaky gut, the breakdown of the gut barrier, under normal conditions, it helps keep those bacteria from crossing between the cells and, getting into the bloodstream. So then under heat stress, you'll get that increase in the leaky gut. So the bacteria cross into the bloodstream and go into the other organs. And then you can get additional issues beyond just the gut health issues. So a healthy gut is a key to resilience when you're going under a heat stress. And these are, properly developed intestinal morphology. You need a high diversity of that bacteria, and you just need that barrier function to be working, as well as that balanced immunity. So I'm going to be going over some of this, benefits we've seen, and you'll see these little icons in the bottom left when I'm talking about a certain function. So short chain fatty acids are well known, originally in the lower gut, produced by fermentation. Its benefits in the lower gut. It also has benefits in the upper intestine, in the small intestine, and a couple of short chain fatty acids. Butyric is one of those, where you can see increased epithelial function. They say it's a primary energy source that's primary in the large intestine, but you do see other benefits like the improvement in the mucus quality and synthesis. You need that mucus barrier to help prevent those bacteria from crossing, as well as between the cells in the intestine. You need that intestinal barrier function, which has also been shown with butyric many times over. So you need that tight junction to prevent that bacteria from crossing over. So valerate is one that's been around. It's in the intestinal tract of humans and animals. It's just not being as commonly looked at, but there is additional benefits. Again, you'll see that intestinal barrier function, but you also see the antimicrobial peptides such as defensins, and you see other immune regulation that you may see additional to the butyrins. So the dendritic cells, the Tregs, where you can see that reduction in inflammation, reduction in oxidative stress, and increase in secretory IgA production. So there's benefits with, different benefits with different types of short chain fatty acids. So, the delivery of exogenous short chain fatty acids, so that's, what you're feeding in a diet, it is important because you want to get it into the small intestine to have these benefits that I've shown above, not just, either utilizing the crop or sent out through into the large intestine where you already have an abundance of it. So in this example, this research that was done using butyric acid, they fed the birds and then they killed it 42 days, and then they looked at short chain fatty, the butyric in the different parts of the intestinal tract. So they used like an unprotected sodium butyrate, a tributyrin, a fat-coated sodium butyrate, or a combination of unprotected and tributyrin. What they fed is they fed equal levels of all of them. So you'll see different inclusion rates because different products have different levels of butyric in there. So one's a lower, like a 23% in the fat-coated. You need 8.4 pounds or 4.2 kilograms per metric ton to feed to get that high, which is well above the actually used in the diets today, but just to keep them equivalent level of butyric into the bird. So in the study, they looked at the different sections. So in the crop, for example, you can see the unprotected tributyrin in the dark blue, the fat-coated in black, and then the combination you can see here. So in a crop, they did see 12 times more butyric in that crop versus the unfed control birds. Again, they're just measuring the contents, so some of this might be probably what is in the protected form being released from the protected form when they analyze it. But when you start looking in lower in the prevent gizzard, now you can see a difference where these coated products here will actually see lower levels of butyric released, which is still a lot more, 16 times higher than the control birds. And then when you get into the small intestine, now we're seeing a different response. Now the tributyrin, there was a 6 times level than the untreated, but then the unprotected and the fat-coated were significantly lower. And then this last one was mainly due to the tributyrin causing that release. Then when you get down to the lower section, like I mentioned, you get a lot of butyrate production naturally in those birds, produced by the fermentation in the cica. So you can see even high levels were in the unfed birds. So this is, why it's of more importance to get it into the small intestine than down in the lower. And you can see variability, even with this unprotected one still, with the tributyrin still has some high levels in there. So how do you get a glyceride, butyrin, tributyrin into the small intestine? Well, when it hits that the lipase after the digestive tract, in the small intestine when it's coming in, you're going to see that release. The lipase will then break off the butyrins. 2 butyrins will come off, with the third one, staying as a monobutyrene. It's like any triglyceride. You'll get the third one will stay attached to the glycerol backbone, but they're released more so in the small intestine, the upper and mid sections, versus getting all the way down. And that's the benefit, we're seeing in this. So, the young bird is very important for that, to get a good start. So their morphology is important for, nutrient digestion, absorption, but at the young bird, they just really have a short morphology. So you want to increase that morphology really fast. And, in order to do, you got to get that strong base to prepare for that rapid growth as they age. So that quick maturing of that small intestine, the villi, will improve improve that villi development, increase enzyme digestion. So here's a trial where tributyrin was fed versus an antimicrobial. In this case, it was a bacitration fed in this trial. So the last two diets, this is day 14, so young bird. So the last two diets were basically the same diet at this period. We fed 500, you know, grams per, metric ton of feed. But what you can see in all three sections, you see that increase in the villi height when you look at the tributyrin versus the control. And even in the duodenum and jejunum, we're actually seeing increased villi height versus the antibiotic in this case. So, you get that improvement. It's similar or better to the antibiotic on the upper section on digestibility. But other than morphology, it's also important to get your microbial bacterium structure to be good and improve rapidly. So the bird matures around 20 days. So that first days of life, they have a very low beneficial bacteria. So any introduction in bad bacteria, you'll get them reproducing really quickly because they have no competition. So you got to increase that complexity as they get older. The microbes change from like E. coli salmonella to more of a anaerobic focus with the Clostridium. So you just got to prepare those animals, and that microbial diversity is important for that protection of that animal. So here's a couple of trials. Here's looking at the digesta. This would be a 21-day-old broiler, fed with and without the tributyrin. They looked in the ileum and the cecum, you can see on the left, and you'll see bacillus and lactobacillus. Actually, we saw an improvement in those with the tributyrin fed in both the ileum and in the cecum. And then in the cecum, we see that the coliform actually then decreased. And here's another trial where we're looking, also this is a 42-day-old broiler, so it's an older bird, looking at a control in gray or antibiotic growth hormone in black, and then the tributyrin, the SR130 in the blue bar. So you can see salmonella is coming down, and more so with the E. coli is reduced. But then, as expected, with some of those antibiotics, you'll see the beneficial bacteria decrease, like this, the lactobacillus decreased, but then it came back up with the SR130 tributyrin. And then both products are improving that reduction in Clostridium perfringens. And in additional, we did see a nice reduction in the relative small intestine weight relative to the body weight of the animals. So when it comes to intestinal integrity, it's very important to keep that bacteria from crossing over your small intestinal wall lining getting into the bloodstream. So it's got to be, it's a protective barrier. It also, it improves nutrient absorption in the villi length and just, being able to absorb nutrients, but not bacteria. And then immune health is, of course, important when you're trying to fight off bacteria, but it's also important when you don't have bacteria present, you don't want that immune system stimulated. And overall, the importance is just trying to get that animal performance up. So this is just example when you're going from symbiosis to dysbiosis, you get that mucus layer starts coming down, bacteria crossing, you'll get the pro-inflammatory cytokines increased, and more so with the leaky gut syndrome. Your immune system's turned on because those cytokines are crossing or being produced into that on the other side of the barrier there. So intestinal integrity is important when you're looking at the health of those animals. So research, shown with butyrate and valerate, those two short chain fatty acids, there's been beneficial response with the combination, such as we've seen increase, this is published research showing increased gene expression of those tight junction proteins. You can facilitate assembly of those tight junctions, involving that AMP PK. Excuse me. But Valeric has actually shown some very important in maintaining the barrier integrity, the keratin expression and then the actin filaments organization. So here you can see the actin filaments involved in those tight junctions. So there's a lot of research, obviously a lot in the human side. That's where most of this gut health has come around, but now it's can be equally used in the poultry side. So I mentioned, tight junction protein expression. So here was a study where we fed butyrins and valerins to broilers. This would be the Gastrivix avi, if you see the word Gastrivix product. Looking at the gene expression, so 28-day, 42-day on the left, you can see that the ZO and the oclin increased expressions at 28-day, and then 42-day we saw significant claudin and oculin gene expression with this combination product in protecting those tight junctions and making those tight junctions. So when going down into the immunity, you want to have that balanced immunity. We've talked about this many times. So this was a broiler study where birds fed with and without the Gastrivix avi were euthanized at 21 days, and 16 birds per treatment were taken out. And they looked at RNA extraction and measured, mRNA sequencing. So this very colorful wheel, anything in purple is down, the pathway is deactivating and then activating in the green. So if you're looking close in the purple, a lot of that is the immune side of things. So it's not, and these are, control non-challenged birds, but the digestive metabolism, nutrient absorption side, we still see an uptick of those. So it's improving, digestibility of nutrients and just energy to that versus going to the immune system. And if you just kind of zoom in on the immune side of things, as you can see, it's more of that purple color, pink. So it's, we're reallocation of sources. So it's keeping that inflammation in check when it's not needed. So, but it's not inactivating the immune system. So it's not negatively affecting the immune system. So you'll have some pathways that still increase the mTOR signal, which, shows that it's used for improving utilization of nutrients and growth, maintaining cellular homeostasis and metabolism. So it's important to, maintain. But then interference, you can see in the bottom left corner, interference can be beneficial, can be harmful because they increase. So, type 1 interference, like interferon alpha and beta, they can suppress inflammation versus like maybe an interferon gamma, which you see actually, reduced here, that has more of an inflammatory response, pro-inflammatory response. So it's keeping the good interferons up and the not so good down when you don't have a challenge, that is. So you're just trying to resolute the inflammation so that the tissues can still regenerate, and you're not using energy in the wrong way. It goes to maintaining the cells versus protecting it under a non-challenge situation. So I talked about, effect of these short chains on the intestinal and in the intestinal walls and cells. Now there's another one that is good for working indirectly, but more in the gut itself and on the bacteria itself. And that's our Proforce AC299, which is a sodium formate product. So sodium formate has a dual benefit. You'll have the formate ions, which is well known for keeping pathogens under control, whether it's in the feed. Formate produces formic acid, which then has that bacteria effect. So there's about 63 formates in the 8 sodium formate product, and the remainder, about 32% of that is sodium. So sodium is needed for nutritional, but it's also needed to keep the dietary electrolyte balance, which Dr. Anderson was talking a little bit earlier. So how sodium formate works is it works at the gastric level in the stomach. So you'll get the sodium formate come into the intestine, and sodium is readily released and absorbed into the animal. And the formate then will take a hydrogen and resulting in a formic acid production, which again, formic acid is well known as antibacterial, so it helps the upper keep that bacteria in upper coming in, whether it's through the environment, ingesting. It helps control that bacteria up at the upper level, so it's not going down lower into the intestine. So, if you look at the bacterial static, so antibacterial benefits, there's some in vitro work we did at a pH 6, so mimicking the gut, low on down, but it's showing the effect on salmonella here without versus 1 kilogram or 3 kilogram. So you seeing less growth of salmonella in this trial. And then looking at E. coli, the same response, where it even actually saw that negative, so it was actually killing below zero, the effect. So that is that, formate releasing to produce formic acid, and then can be that antibacterial benefit. So when you have these heat stress times, it's been well known about sodium and its benefit, DEB, dietary electrolyte balance. So under typical conditions, respiratory helps. You don't see any increase in blood pH because you have a balance of CO2 going out and the bicarbonate in the blood. So you're going to have a 7.4 pH under normal conditions. But then when you get into the summer months, when they have excessive panting, that's how they release the heat. You'll get that increased release of CO2 because they're panting so much. So the imbalance comes in effect. Now you release too much. Now you got more bicarbonate in the blood, less, more carbons coming out through CO2. So now you got that respiratory alkalosis. So your pH goes up above physiology levels. And now the body wants to release that bicarbonate. So the kidneys will excrete bicarbonates. But in order for the kidneys to excrete bicarbonate, it needs sodium to attach to it for it to be excreted. And so that's where typically you've heard sodium bicarbonate's a lot being used, to help, as a sodium source to help with that. But then now, you can also you can use the AC209 sodium formate as a sodium source that doesn't buffer the tract, like in the broiler birds, where, if you start buffering the tract, you'll start affecting digestibility of other nutrients that are coming through the stomach with the lower pH. So I've mentioned dietary electrolytes. Here we don't formulate in the U.S. on dietary electrolytes because if you ever asked anybody, they really don't. They have it maybe kicked out in the formulation, but they don't formulate for it. Overseas, they do a lot more of that. Down in the South, Latin countries, they do more of that. So that's your dietary electrolyte balance is basically taking in your sodium, potassium, and chloride. Sulfate also has an effect. So higher DEB is caused by sodium and potassium, and then chloride will bring it down. So there's a simple formulation that you can see there if you want to calculate a DEB in the feed of the animal. So why DEB is important, because if you have a lower DEB, you're going to get acid-base imbalance, which then impedes metabolic functions. You'll get increased energy being used for this homeostatic equivalent instead of going to growth. And then in response, you get poor feed efficiency and growth. So they say about a 250 DEB would be good. That's kind of about as optimum as you can get, but it's difficult to get that high of level. So, but we did some research looking at feeding the ProForce AC299, looking at heat stress, and you can see here sodium bicarbonate or the ProForce, increased DEB at 3 kilograms per ton, 36 or 42. When they did regular feeding, regular no heat stress through 21 days, no mortality differences. But then when they hit it with a 40C, which is about 104 Fahrenheit, you can see mortality was much higher. And they saw a drop with the sodium bicarb and even further with the AC299. So you see that mortality response is even better, but it's hard to explain how only 6 milliequivalents could cause that. So it could be the other benefit of having that formate in there to help with microbial control. So I wasn't watching my time, but thank you everybody for listening, and appreciate any questions.
I just realized I was muted. Thank you, Dr. Broomhead, for your nice presentations on the organic acids. We learned a lot. First thing first, we have a few questions. I'm going to go for maybe one or two. So the first question here from the audience is: Have you found any benefits of tributylene in a necrotic enteritis challenge?
Yes, we've done many trials with it, actually, because that's one of those key uses of it. We're reducing that necrotic enteritis, the Clostridium. So we've seen many times of improved performance and reduced mortality and lesions with necrotic enteritis. So that is one of those key benefits.
Thank you. Maybe I'll take one more question before we wrap up from your talk. Again, similar concept, but the speaker is going to ask more into about the Perstorp. Great work from the Perstorp, impressive villus height gains. How does tributylene stack up against the AGPS antibody growth promoters across different production conditions?
Obviously, growth motors you can't beat when you're controlling, bacteria issues and just controlling those issues in the gut. This is obviously a alternate for those who want to reduce it. NAE, for example, that's where we saw a lot when we went in NAE here in the States. We saw that increase, the uptick of butyrate tributylene use. But it's kind of like anything. It's hard to replace it completely. You need to use other things.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Broomhead, for coming today and speaking to our Feed Additive Summit. And I'd love to chat with you in maybe one of the meetings, maybe in PSA, if you're coming there in July. All right. Thank you. You're welcome, and have a great afternoon. Okay, so we're almost at the end of the program, but here one more speakers we have, Dr. Phil Steyer. So Dr. Steyers, I have been knowing him from quite a few times since I'm here at Mississippi State University. So Dr. Steyer, welcome to our webinar.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. So maybe I'll jump right in.
Yes, sir.
So as soon as this comes up, y'all can see the slides now. My talk's gonna be very practical. I was in production for 23 years with Sanderson Farms, and about 2015, we lost this compound called 3-nitro, and I was looking for its replacement for over a decade. And in production, I had a presentation brought to me that I thought that might be something like 3-nitro. So as I talked about this topic, I realized that a lot of folks don't know what 3-nitro is or was. And it was an arsenic compound, a non-antibiotic. Its trade name was roxarsone. It was approved in the U.S. back in the 1950s for this improvement of growth, feed efficiency, pigmentation, and prevention of coccidiosis. And the manufacturer voluntarily suspended it in 2013, and then the FDA withdrew it for 2015. And the reason being is because it had arsenic in it. But what did 3-nitro do? Why do we even want to play with a compound that had arsenic in it? And as the label claimed, it was for improvement of growth, feed efficiency, pigmentation, and prevention of coccidiosis. But practical experience, and I say this kind of jokingly, it made everything better. In terms of coccidiosis control, it was not effective by itself, but it helped, particularly with the lower intestinal cocci like Eimeria. You could see that it reduced fecal moisture. It did brighten the shank color, and it did help with daily gain. So all those are good performance parameters. So those are the things we used 3-nitro for. However, 3-nitro did have side effects. There was called 3-nitro knockdown. And typically in a cool morning, if birds would overconsume feed, they would go through a temporary paresis and then they get over it. And with that also, lack of mobility at times, then over time they could get tendonitis and be more leg issues at the processing plant on broilers. That being said, when tested, birds that were on 3-nitro did not have any more arsenic in the meat than untreated birds. And the reason that the FDA went after the compound, because it was an avoidable arsenic exposure. In their samples, they found that one bird with a liver from one bird had elevated arsenic levels compared to the controls. But that being said, when they tested the carcasses and what was consumed, the other food items that we eat routinely, rice and shrimp, for instance, accumulate arsenic. And one meal of either one of those would be more than you could get in a year's worth of chicken meat with or without 3-nitro in it. So it seemed to be a bit of overkill to lose a non-antibiotic help in feed conversion performance. So I'll take these benefits, just shrunk them down, the same benefits, just reduce them so I can compare it to another compound I'm going to introduce you all to today. So this new 3-nitro maybe, and all this label, this is a grass product. So as most grass products, it's pretty generic labeling. The U.S. label says approved for the following categories of animals: poultry, turkeys, layers, and pigs. When you looked through the marketing information, according to the manufacturer, made everything better. The same things that 3-nitro did: help coccidiosis control, reduce fecal moisture, improve foot pad scores, not so much leg color, but foot pads, and improve average daily gain. A nice side effect was that if it was too much in the feed, the birds would back off of feed. They wouldn't get knocked down. And it is a naturally occurring product, so they fit a lot of the desire for plant-based products. And again, according to the manufacturer, because this product comes from trees, actually more carbon's consumed than is generated when making the product. And it's been proven efficacious both inside and outside the U.S. This product was brought to the U.S. in 2020, which is the same time COVID happened. So I didn't get exposed to this until 2022. And this product is NutriP from Silvafeed. And it's, you can see here, this is again a marketing brochure from the Silva Team Group, but it has the benefits listed there. Gut health enhancement, litter quality improvement, foot pad integrity increase, egg cleanliness, and natural growth promoter. And there's 3 modes of action. We'll get through these 3 modes through the presentation. And you can see that here on this label is for broilers and turkeys and laying hens, but it's also used in swine and cattle. In fact, it went through the mammalian species before it got to the avian species. Most of this experience is outside the U.S., but I'm going to have mostly U.S.-based experience from the last 2 years. So what is it? What is NutriP? It's a combination of polyphenols from quebracho trees in Argentina and chestnut trees in Italy. And these two phenolic compounds, you can see the chestnut on the left-hand side here is a more simple organic structure than quebracho tree. So there you have hydrolyzable tannins and condensed tannins. The hydrolyzable from the chestnuts tend to dissociate higher in the intestinal tract, whereas the condensed tannins tend to stay preserved to the end in the lower gut, and some even pass through. But both these polyphenols have antioxidant, antispasmodic, immunomodulatory, and antibacterial effects. And we'll go through some of these here through the presentation. And so, again, looking for a product that replaced arsenic compound, I was concerned about what was in Nutri-P. And you see here from their product data sheet on the composition, it's over 70% tannins. Look down here, and the heavy metals are tested, and arsenic is down below 1 ppm. So it's not a metallic-based effect. It's based upon the natural products of polyphenols. So again, what does this do? How does this work? It helps with gut health. It could be an alternative to anti-growth promoters. It's a low inclusion, which in the U.S. is 1 to 2 pounds per ton, is kind of, would say, the target for most non-nutritive feed additives. That could be helpful in addition to other products as well. But Nutri-P helps make other things better. And how is that? Well, these are 3 modes of action. We'll go through these: optimizing gut motility, modulating gut microbiota, and restoring the gut barrier. First, on the gut motility, it's been documented, and you'll see on these slides down here on the bottom corner, there's these PY numbers, and they're referencing research done in different places around the world. But if you go up here to the cartoon, and I couldn't get this animated in this presentation, but as we all know, it's experience with animals under stress, they'll tend to get diarrhea and pass extra water in the intestine. The transit time's too fast. Well, with these tannins, it will slow down the peristalsis so that the animal will absorb more of the moisture. And you can see here one of the studies showed a 15% retention time of digestion in broilers. And because the feces are less water content, then there's less anaerobic fermentation, less odor, and then, of course, less water for the foot pads of contact. So the slowing down of the digesta helps to increase water absorption and reduce the fecal moisture. And this now is feed passage, and this is what you can see through feed. And there's 3 different studies, 3 different countries here: Argentina, Brazil, and U.S. And showing on a control feed what they saw with undigested feed coming through. As you can see here, an Argentinian study was 80%, down to the Brazilian study was 30%. But when they put Nutri-P in at this higher dose, is 2 pounds per ton. In all 3 countries, they saw a reduction in undigested feed, and it says 25 to 30 percentage points. Again, on the studies over here on the right-hand side, it looks like digestive enzymes increased twofold. Crude protein retention improved 3.2%, and then dry matter digestibility improved as well. So slowing the intestine down helps get more nutrients out of the ingesta. And then this is a very simple test done, and we've seen this time and time again in the U.S. Whatever the feed beforehand, and look at the fecal output, and then within 2 to 3 days of birds of the same formulation, just with Nutri-P added, the feces will be drier and darker. And I call it the eyeball test. It doesn't take a whole lot of technology to see that, but people that walk houses can see that pretty quickly and evidently. It is a transient effect. You have to have Nutri-P in the feed for it to work. It does not persist. But you can again see these research trials, studies on the right-hand side. Litter humidity was reduced by 7% on average. And nitrogen was reduced by 11% on average. So that's good news too for excretia, less odor, less waste. And then, in terms of shipping poles in the U.S., we've had off and on market opportunities with that. But here's some studies from outside the U.S., 4 different countries, and you'll see the 4 different colored bars over there. But all 4 countries showed an improvement in poles. And you can see the 4 grades from no lesion up to severe lesions. That in all the studies, and this is a change from before, from control, all improved the undamaged paw, the no lesion paw. And then one study had a little increase in the minors, but the other ones had decreases. And in all 4 studies showed a decrease in the moderate severe lesions. And of course, this helps on the marketability of the pawls. And the next slide shows an actual integrator in Brazil. And when they ran this study and the data they shared back with the manufacturer, before they went on NutriP, they were throwing away about 23% of the pawls. And then when they went to NutriP, again, a higher dose, 2 pounds per ton, that loss went down by half, down to 10%, essentially. So a real life experience there improved pawl quality. So the next thing, mode of action, is the gut microbiota. And here, this would be a study was done in the control birds before they went on NutriP, and you can see the relative populations of firmicutes, bacteroides, the lactobacillus, Bifidium, enterococcus. And then after they went to NutriP, you'll see a shift here. So the firmicutes increased, bacteroides decreased, lactobacillus, Bifidium, and enterococcus all increased. So in some ways, NutriP looked like it was acting like a prebiotic and favoring the beneficial bacteria and taking away from the less beneficial. And then the last mode of action is restoring the gut barrier. And these are now a study that was done in South America on the intestinal lesions. This would be a necrotic enteritis model. And you can see from the pictures on the lesion scores, 0 to 3, it would be pre-necrotic. These would not be clinical necrotic cases. So birds on control feed, you can see the lesion score there was moderate to severe, 2.3 to 2.8. And then as you go through the intestine from duodenum, jejunum down to ileum, while they're on that either 1 or 2 pounds per ton normal inclusion, those lesions improved down below a moderate level. And also another study was done showing that at 30 days on NutriP reduced the Clostridium dose in the litter by 2 logs, which is quite a reduction. And then a study done in the U.S. in a controlled study. This was replacing antibiotic growth promoters. It's the AGP. You can see the control growth rate there, 2.3, and then antibiotics and the NutriP about the same. And so here, at least in a controlled study, it looked like NutriP could maintain that growth. That was with the antibiotics. This is a larger study done in South America. Again, it's been licensed there longer, manufactured in Argentina. And this was a large integrator, and they went through 6 productive cycles, over 700,000 broilers, a Cobb 500, and using as 2 pounds per ton of NutriP. And what they saw using this European efficiency index, the AGPs again is growth promoters, and the blue would be NutriP. And there's really no difference on the production factors at 5 weeks or 7 weeks. And then you look at, again, over time, then the average daily gain in the blue is NutriP, and the red is the antibiotics. And there's no significant difference there. They maintain itself. So there, again, in Argentina for a year, it looked like the NutriP at 2 pounds per ton did as good as the antibiotic growth promoter. So that was great. You know, that's a real hope for NutriP doing things that 3-nitro did. And then, of course, in their studies and observations and using it in different production classes, found out that NutriP had these other benefits. Again, you'll see none of these benefits is listed as therapeutic or turn off the switch. It does help restrain roundworms. It does help limit blackhead, helps improve egg sanitation, helps reduce internal egg contamination, bacterial contamination, and it works in turkey. So these benefits here, you see there's no claims to absolute therapy, but there are improvements. And we'll go through each of these. On the roundworms, there's work was done in the University of Arkansas just recently, the end of 23 and into 24, and presented this data at Western Poultry Disease Conference out in Salt Lake City, Utah last year. But in a university study where they gave roundworm challenge to turkeys, putting the birds on NutriP or one of the subcomponents, Cobatra, the condensed tannin. You see there in yellow, the total nematode levels were reduced by almost 40%. if you go on to read the next line, for some of those groups that continued on with the Nutri-P and then were treated with fenbendazole, there was another reduction. So the Nutri-P did not interfere with the commercial anthelmintic, but seemed to have quite a bit of help on restraining the roundworms by itself. And then in blackhead, in the U.S., we have nothing to treat blackhead. And so this is a study that was done in vitro. So they looked at the protozoan counts and had different concentrations in Nutri-Ps. You can see here from 50 ppms to 5,000 ppms. I convert this to U.S. down here. The half of 0.1 pound per ton is not what we would run in U.S., but 1 pound would be. 10 pounds would be backing off birds off feed. But you can see you had a benefit of reduction or antiprozoal activity at the 1 pound per ton, the lower inclusion that we run in the U.S. And then if you go look at what happened in turkeys, and this was now a 28-day study, they had the birds from day one, and then they had them on Nutri-P feed, so it was a pre-exposure. And then they gave them blackhead infection in 18 days, and then necrops in 28 days. And you can see on the reduction of sickle scores that control versus Nutri-P. Nutri-P didn't stop all the blackhead, but it did help reduce it. The infection rate went down from almost 40% to about half, 20%. And then there was no liver lesion score seen in the Nutri-P birds. Again, this dose is a little higher than what we would normally run, 3 pounds per ton, but that would not be at a level backing them off. So this was in birds and did help reduce blackhead, but did not stop it, did not treat it. Another use of Nutri-P is on commercial layers. You can see here it made the eggs better versus a controlled diet. The eggshell strength, egg weight, hull units all improved on Nutri-P. That's a good thing. Then in broiler breeders, dirty eggs are a problem, bringing dirt into the hatchery. And this is a commercial producer that was setting 2.9 million eggs a week. And their normal dirty eggs before these Nutri-P was 2.5%. After they went to Nutri-P, didn't stop it, but reduced by 1%. They got down to 1.5%. And so they've been on Nutri-P now for over 2 years for this purpose, to reduce the dirty eggs coming into the hatchery. And this is another producer that used Nutri-P for the same purpose. And you can see before it was available in the U.S. here in 2021, this is now bacteria present in unhatched eggs, residue eggs. And they were running about 0.5% or 1/3% of the eggs set were contaminated, but after they went to Nutri-P, that was in half. So again, the bacterial penetration into the egg, which was probably simply just less dirty eggs coming in, was reduced with Nutri-P. It's a good story. And then turkeys. This is a producer again in the U.S. that was going from conventional program to ABF. So they tried to use Nutri-P to help them make that transition. And these are observations. This is not good science. This is anecdotal. This is field experience. But reports from the turkey producers, they had drier floors and less enteritis. The birds are a little bit lighter, but a lot younger, better livability, and lower cost. So that was a win. So they could raise the turkeys without antibiotics with all Nutri-P. So how does it all work? It all works with these 3 modes of action, which we went through, affecting the gut motility, affecting the gut microbiota, helping the gut barrier. So in my mind, this came to me, looked like the new 3-nitro. It may not solve everything, but makes everything better. And again, it's not the end of the story. Silva Team is a large company, and they've used this Nutri-P base in other products for animals. And Nutricox is Nutri-P plus some saponins for coccidiosis. And ATX is, again, Nutri-P with other polyphenols for oxidative stress. And we won't go through all those products, but the base is the same quebracho and chestnut extracts that make up Nutri-P. So again, I think we have something new here can help out. And now that I'm a private consultant, I like to be able to help people. So I figure Nutri-P might be a way to help repair some things. So with that, I think I'm ready for questions. I think we got done just in time.
Thank you. Excellent, Dr. Stair. We learned a bit about the product. Here, I can see there are 2 questions here for you. I'll take a moment to ask the first one. Do you have any experience with the Nutri-P versus the other feed additives?
Yes, and it's been mostly replacements. Where I propose Nutri-P is to be an additive on top of an and, not an or. But folks in the ABF world, they're trying to raise animals without antibiotics or use various combinations. And I have seen NutriP compete with and supplant other non-antibiotic options.
Thank you. The next question is, in your opinion, what benefits stood out there, and are bigger field trials on the horizon?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing is this is a consistent result. If you put NutriP in the feed, you will dry the feces. That's guaranteed. It won't dry the house. You still got to do drinker management and fans and all that. But as I said, during the presentation, within 2 to 3 days of birds going on NutriP, there'll be a noticeable difference in the droppings. And that's a rare occurrence when you're doing a natural product that you actually see an effect every time you run it. In terms of bigger field trials, really not so much field trials, but field experiences. And I think that's where it's headed to. It's gaining ground. Since 2020 was COVID, wasn't much use. And since then, since 22, 23, 24, it's all been almost doubling each year, market penetration. And so it's been a great story, and it's an easy one to ride along with.
Right. Again, thank you, Dr. Phil Stair, for coming today and speaking to our event. I really personally enjoyed having you today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Pratima.
You're welcome. To close our event, I would like to thank everyone who attended and stayed with us until the end. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to have you this afternoon. I would also like to thank once again to our sponsors for this event, this live event, who made this event very, very possible. Signify and Perster. Thank you and have a fantastic day. I hope to see you all again soon.